Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
Well then, after the weekend's games, we now have our Pro 14 semi-finals lineup. On Friday, for the third season in a row in the Pro 14, it's Leinster against Munster in the semis, both sides winning over the weekend. And on Saturday, the second semi-final is Ulster, Edinburgh in Murrayfield, 7:35pm kickoff. Delighted to say Brian O'Driscoll is with us. Good evening.
Good evening, Joe. How are you?
Very well. Leinster winning against Ulster, 28 points to 10. Just the 23 wins in a row now for Leinster. Post-lockdown, they are 2 from 2, 38 players used, 15 changes from the win over Munster. And according to the squad update this morning, Dan Levy, James Ryan and Tyg Furlong, no less, all in the mix for Friday. They are a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, the juggernaut continues. Yeah, they were very impressive again. The first 50 minutes in particular, I thought, it was an incredibly solid performance. Got themselves out to a 16-point lead. Didn't seem as though Ulster had done a huge amount wrong, but it's just a matter of which, players, some players, seen out of position, even Frawley playing at 12 rather than his accustomed 10 position, and the seamlessness with which they integrate into the team is kind of something to behold. So, just very, very impressive. And it feels as though they have a gear to ratchet up if the opposition does seem to catch them, or they have a little purple patch, that they have something else in their locker to be able to ignite them into a different level where teams just can't compete with them. And they got a little bit of luck with that John Cooney decision late on in the game, and then they put it to bed, and maybe the overall scoreline flattered them a fraction, but they are some side at the moment, and it's a squad that would be the envy of most squads in Europe.
Yeah, Dan McFarland wasn't happy with that offside, the interception by John Cooney. That was at 21-10. Leinster did go on to score a third try. As you say, though, the general suspicion, I think, would be if Ulster got back to within 4 of Leinster, they would find another gear, Leinster.
Yeah, and do you know what? I've looked at that a good few times and watched it live, and I thought, we can't have any complaints when they did pull it back. And then I've looked at it. It's a real 50-50 decision, the one that Cooney got penalised for. I've seen referees let them go too. There's not a whole lot in it. I think Dan McFarland's clutching at straws a small bit. That yes, it would have been a one-score game, but it wasn't as though the whole momentum was in Ulster's favour at that point. Leinster would have had kick-off, and they've been a team that have been very good at closing out games, as we saw them actually ending up doing with Harry Byrne's late score. So I think on the face of everything, I think it was a very strong performance, a better performance from Ulster, but they had a long way to improve from their performance against Connacht. But I have to say, it'll be difficult for them to go away not having hit their straps yet in this second coming of the 2019-20 season. They haven't really been at their best. They've kind of made a lot of unforced errors in passages of play where they're stringing phases together and coughing ball up that they wouldn't ordinarily do. But there's a couple of shining lights. Stockdale at 15 looks impressive. They'll have had an opportunity of resting some of their key players to make sure that they're good to go this weekend, and know that knockout rugby brings out a different beast in players.
What is it about Stockdale at 15 that you like?
He just looks very comfortable there. He looks as though he's getting more touches. He looks very commanding in the air. His left foot boot. He had a couple of really searching 50, 60 meter connections, relieving pressure. Their exits have been good. I said to Nathan last week that I love having that right foot, left foot at 10 and 15 to have that option. It gives huge variety to what you can do. You can attack, and if it doesn't look good for you, you can get boot to ball and turn it into an attacking exit. And I think they did that a number of times. Both relieving pressure, but also keeping the ball in and getting good kick chase to try and turn the ball over. So Stockdale right now, just his presence, I think he's using that to great effect. Sometimes I wonder, does he realise the power that he punches, that he packs? when he's accelerating into contact. Like, he is an enormous unit, and sometimes he doesn't. You look at players like Jamie Roberts is a great example of it, where he uses every last sinew of power and size that he has to accelerate into the hole. I think Stockdale has to learn. He's got another 5 or 10% in those collision zones that he can be the aggressor. But for the most part, I've been impressed with what he's done, and the amount of touches and the amount of meters. I think he was top on the meters gain this weekend in all games, nearly accumulating 90 meters. So yeah, and he only played 65 minutes. So overall, very impressive.
And with the view to this 18 November tournament, by which time James Lowe will be Irish qualified, and we have Earls and we have Conway and we have Lowe obviously, and we have Larmour and we have Stockdale. You want to obviously fit in as much talent as possible. Is he a very viable option for an Irish 15 jersey then?
I think he is. I think if you look at it, obviously it's between him and Larmour at the moment. They're the two guys that can clearly play 15. Lowe is going to get game time. I don't know if he's going to be put in immediately into the setup, on the basis of him being qualified. I think sometimes that message isn't the one that players or coaches like getting across, that there's a new guy in a squad. He's got to earn the right to play internationally, and you can't just throw him in the first game and almost be thankful that you have him. I think in a team where the back three has looked good, and with Conway and Earls playing well, I think it'll be hard to not select those two guys. Depending on whether you're going to play Stockdale at fullback or Larmour at fullback. So it is now a nice position to be in, and Lowe will get game time. I just don't know if he'll get it immediately, or if he'll get it in the games where you're picking your first 15. I think he has to earn that right to get into that first 15. And
how do you weigh up Larmour versus Stockdale?
I think at the moment, a lot will be judged on this weekend's performance from Larmour at 15 if he gets it. I have a sneaking suspicion that he might go with Rob Kearney at 15 this weekend, and Larmour on the wing. Obviously, with the injury to Dave Kearney, no Adam Byrne, no Fergus McFadden. I just think you go with experience. You might lose a little bit of cutting edge in counter-attack at 15. And I know Stuart Lancaster does like playing all-out attack, but there's a security to having someone like Rob Kearney at 15 when you have the ability to shift Larmour to the wing as well. It is about getting your best players out on the park. And if you play Larmour at 15, I don't know what winger you put on. You don't put on a Hugo Keenan. I don't think you put on a Cian Kelleher on the wing for a clutch semi-final game like this against Munster. I think you go with your best players and your most experienced players, and those that have calm heads. And I think Rob Kearney at 15 might be the decision that they go with Larmour on the wing. So it'll be a different sort of performance for Larmour on the back of that. He'll obviously have less high balls to deal with, but everyone will be keeping a very keen eye if he does play there, and the box kicks from Conor Murray, whether Conway or whoever it might be he's marking, get the better of him, because it's an area of his game that definitely needs honing.
Yes. You might have a feel for this. What kind of input will Andy Farrell have when it comes to Stockdale playing at 15 or Larmour playing at 15? Like Irish coaches down the year, can they ring up provinces or go through the RFU and say, listen, can you give him some game time there? And how does it depend on who the provincial coach is?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it depends on the relationship with the national coach at the time, and it also depends on what the best fit for the province in that particular game is. It's easier to do that throughout the year rather than at the business end of the season, as semi-finals and finals.
But the provinces do have autonomy. They can say, "Listen, sorry, it's not happening."
They do, okay. and if it didn't fit Dan McFarlane's setup, where he wanted to play Jacob Stockdale solely on the wing, that's his prerogative, and he's entitled to stick to that. Whereas I think a lot of these provincial coaches will think about wins with the national coach and favours being done, and obviously as well, if a coach has an idea that a player might fit well in a particular position, other coaches are open to suggestion with those things, and maybe they might have a point. You try them out once and it doesn't work, well, at least you've tried it once. But it's more difficult to do that in clutch games. But a player like Jacob Stockdale, he's going to rise to the occasion, be it on the wing or at 15. There's more responsibilities at 15, and now that he's a couple of years older, I think he's in that position to be able to take on more pressure. But for the most part, Dan McFarlane maybe will be thinking, yeah, I'll give him a go there. If it works out, terrific. I'll be seen to have done a solid for the international coach, and maybe I'll get a favour somewhere else down the line too.
So with the view to Leinster, Munster then at the weekend, Leinster 28, Ulster 10. We spoke very briefly just before coming on air. You wanted to make a point about the messages Leinster send the opposition, or they sent Ulster certainly in the first couple of minutes here.
Yeah, it's just the psychology of what Leinster do, and I think they're such a clever team. And be it Felipe Contepomi or Leo Cullen or Stuart Lancaster, or in fact the individuals that are playing in that Leinster setup, I just think the picture that they show to the opposition, but then so often they do something slightly different, even though they'll know the analysis that has been done on them will feel as though it's a setup for a particular play. And the loop play is a great example of it. Back when I was playing, it was the Brumbies play, and it used to be that 10, 12, 13 short and out the back to 10 looping around, or hit the 13 short and then a blind winger trailing. And so you could go through the guts, or you could go around players holding your depth as appropriate. What they've started doing now is they're going 9 to 12. They don't have the luxury anymore of having that extra pass, to get through 3 passes before the clutch pass is triggered. They go 9, 12, 13 short, and then 10 out the back with the blind winger trailing. It's the same setup so often, but now we're starting to see the grubber kick used an awful lot. It was used last week, and again, it's all well and good, talking about doing it, but then having the accuracy and the trail lines to be able to get through. I thought it was really clever early on. What it does too, the psychology of it is it gets the opposition questioning their defensive line speed. And then it allows them later on to actually go to the loop play or to the hit return play. So 9, 12, hit 13, back to 12, and then all of a sudden you're around the corner. So, by nudging a ball within the first 2 minutes, straight away as a defensive 13, if I was Hume or if I was McCluskey, I'd be thinking, gosh, I wasn't expecting that. Now we'll be on our heels a little bit more, and that just gives you another second of time on the ball later on in the game. The fact that they were able to regather the ball and then score, 6 or 7 phases later on through Ed Byrne was the icing on the cake. But I just think they really thought through their kicking game, and I wonder whether it's come as a result of the work they've done with the Crusaders, with Robertson, and identifying that kick to regather is a big component of the game. Now that there's a huge amount of the time 14 bodies in the defensive line with 1 in the backfield.
It feels like England really made a point of, I don't want to say pioneering that, but certainly utilising that over the previous couple of years. They had so many lovely little kickers dotted around the pitch, and with line speed coming up and 14 spread across the pitch, there are very few options when it comes to running.
Yeah, well, you still have that option. I think, because when we talk about 14-1, you can talk about what the responsibilities of what the fullback has to cover now. Teams are playing wingers high. It's to show that line speed, to not think about drifting, so you can get up in the opposition's faces. So there has to be space somewhere. And, if you can set up a situation where you manipulate a defence or you pull a fullback out and have a winger playing high and then nudge the ball through, then it's a foot race. And then it's down to the quality of the kicks. And England have obviously had Ford and Farrell, Ben Young's very capable of nudging those little grubber kicks through. And we know the bounce of a rugby ball can bounce any particular way. So at least your odds are stacked at a 50-50 favour when there's a foot rush. And, it bounced badly for Johnny Sexton in Twickenham earlier on this year. And, the aggressiveness of the chase as well from the likes of O'Loughlin and in taking out Fadez. And then Frawley actually being able to recoup the ball, and then all of a sudden they're hammering away at the line. These small moments just set up the doubt in Ulster's mind that, gosh, we thought we were going to have it good from the off, and now Leinster all of a sudden within 3 or 4 minutes are 7 points up.
Just one last point on Leinster then, and we'll bring in Munster Connacht. Kieran Frawley played at 12, which I think caught the eye. He's been working on that in training. He said you do have a lot more time. It's obviously more physical. He seemed to go quite well. I don't know what you thought. So talk to us about Frawley, and then Harry Byrne got about 20 minutes as well. Ross Byrne obviously started, and Johnny Sexton had his feet up. So these three behind Sexton.
Yeah, I haven't seen a huge amount of Frawley. Obviously, he plays a lot of the Pro 14 games when Johnny's away or being rested. And the problem is, is he third, fourth choice now, where I'm not entirely sure. So maybe, he's had a word, or, the coaches have realised that we've got 3 pretty good standard number 10s in Sexton and the 2 Burns. Maybe we need to make him a second distributor in the 12 jersey. And he's done very well from his outing at the weekend. Obviously, he got man of the match, but the question marks would have been around his defensive game. He had a big lump coming at him in Stuart McCluskey. He didn't have it all his own way, but I think having a 10 playing in the 12 jersey gives you that second set of eyes of having an ability to be able to get to the extremities a little bit better with the quality of their pass as well. You look at the passing game of Leinster from all of those 10s, all excellent passers, all on the money. And so it is a bit of an embarrassment of riches, considering that Harry Byrne, who looks incredibly talented, was only sitting on the bench the weekend. Three number 10s of that caliber playing in that 23, and that's not even including Johnny Sexton is something. So I'm excited to see a little bit more of Frawley. I wonder, will he make 12 a little bit more of his own position? He's a bit like Noel Reid when he broke onto the scene. He came in as a number 10. And then he developed into a 12 that could play 10 as well. So maybe we'll see that of Frawley. With regard to Harry Byrne, I thought, he's a very, very confident young player. He brings a real aggressiveness to the way he plays 10. You look at the way lots of 10s take their ball off their number 9. Some take it static, some take it deep. He takes it accelerating onto the ball. He wants to sit down the defensive line by the aggressiveness with which he attacks it. And it's very hard for a defensive line to continue pressing when they see the number 10 hitting the ball hard, hitting it square, and then distributing as well to the outside channels, be it through his forward runners or out the back to one of his outside backs. He had a couple of loose kicks early on, Byrne, but then the crossfield kick to Penny for his try. And then his own try, the manner in which he aggressively took that short line. I just think it's a player that's oozing in confidence. I think we're going to see an awful lot more of him in the 2020-21 season.
Well, they'll all have to fight it out. Latest I heard, Johnny Sexton's going to play until he's 54 now. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, yeah. Do you know what? Johnny Sexton's going to go on for a while. And we have to consciously not be ageist. Just because he is 35 now, he is in incredible condition.
Yeah.
He looks in the shape of his life, and if he has an appetite for it still, that's the problem. A lot of players just run out of steam mentally by the time they get to 35. Some of it is that the new breed come in and there's no connection between the 20, 21-year-olds that are TikToking, in the dressing room, and, you're father of 3 heading home to change nappies. It's a very different dynamic.
Yes.
So that actually is where some players go, you know what, I don't know if this is for me anymore. You start losing all your friends. You're the oldest swinger in town. And the guys that you've hung out with for 12, 13 years, all of a sudden are going on to pastures new. So it's the mental switch as much as the physical sometimes. And as he said himself, he's never really called on his gas to be, his point of difference. I watched him when Luke McGrath made a break last week, and I tell you, he was as quick as I've seen him in a long time. So the expectation is, just because he's 35, everyone wants to write him off. I think there's a couple of good years left in Johnny Sexton for sure. Yeah,
I wouldn't doubt it. Brief tangent, to what extent was it mental for you when it came to stepping away as opposed to physical?
It was more physical for me. I did still love it, but it became mental because the physical really let me down, and that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. I could still see it as well as quickly as ever, but I just couldn't react and couldn't do whatever about the different evolutions you go through over the course of your career. I knew the 21, 22-year-old acceleration and all that. I'd parked that, and I'd gotten over not having an ability to do that by the time I was 30, but there's only so many processes of evolution that you can have. And I was evolving into not actually being able to deliver anything other than a playmaker. And even then, I just felt a bit susceptible in defence. I felt that faster, more agile players could get me. And as a result, it got into my head, and I couldn't get out of there quick enough in the final season.
Munster then had a 7-try win over Connacht, 49 points to 12. This is a strange game to try and analyse in any great depth for obvious reasons. There were 3 yellow and 2 red cards in the opening 40 minutes. Frank Murphy awarded 22 penalties in the first half alone. 13 v 13 at the end of the first half. Byrne and Amani were sin binned. The 2 sending offs, briefly, Abraham Papalili, the tackle on Conor Murray, and Shane Delahunt with his forearm into CJ Standard. Both red cards, I presume we can briefly say.
Definitely red cards. Yeah. Papalili was quite lucky early on a contact with Conor Murray as well. He hit him a little bit of a high shot. It's lovely having an enforcer like that, but what he's going to have to learn very quickly is that he's got to control his collisions. You can't go in with brute force from 5 meters out trying to maim someone with the reality that someone could change direction at the last second and dip or change their body height, and your collision stays on course. You're going to clean their head off. And that's what happened with Conor Murray. He identified that it was a great opportunity for him to get a big hit. Murray thought it was a gap. And it took a while to actually get to the final angle. I think they got to the decision, Ollie Hodges and Frank Murphy, and 100% correct. But actually, it was right after they finished the decision, an angle came in where you could see direct contact with his jaw. And for me, that was a stone cold red card. And then the other one, on the letter of the law, leading with the arm, you catch someone by their in the neck or the head, it's a red card. Frank Murphy tried to see whether there was a yellow card possibility by talking about first impact at the sternum, but Ollie Hodges changed that, and he was right to as well. The contact was straight into his neck. That windpipe injury, I've seen players really struggle with that in the past, so we need to outlaw it, and for me, they got the two of them spot on. I actually think there could have been more yellow cards. I think when Connacht were down to 13, they could have had another man in the bin. I think Frank Murphy probably was a little bit lenient. If they didn't have 2 sendings off, there was definitely going to be a yellow card. And then, sometimes you start siding with a team and feeling subconsciously feeling a bit sorry for them. And the 2 yellow cards that Munster got just before halftime, certainly the Byrne one seemed a little bit harsh. I don't know whether he was off his feet by the time he got the ball, but anyway, the game was over as a spectacle at that stage.
What can Munster take from an attacking perspective from this game? And what are you seeing from them generally? Post-lockdown, Larkham has had his chance now to kind of try and fine-tune things. De Allende's had another game to settle in. Like, if we're listing a problem of Munster's over the last number of years, it's that scoring tries is that bit too much work for them and takes that bit too much out of them. Any signs of rejuvenation and extra wrinkles in their play?
Well, the players that we talked about already, they've got 2 excellent finishers in Earls and Conway, in back at the height of their form, back to the form of last year, and so when you have that, you just have to create opportunities for them. And I think, certainly Conway's first try against Leinster, the manner in which they use the brute force of De Allende and Farrell and Stander and their big ball carriers, that's what they've got to do. It's all about creation of quick ruck ball. No defensive system in the world. Leinster have a great defensive system, but they get narrow when the opposition keeps on going the same way. And Munster, we call it a cog team, keep on going. Munster are at their best when they don't try and get too clever, when they just play brute force, where they get those big ball carriers over the advantage line, and then they have the quality of pass from the likes of JJ Hanrahan and the finishing capabilities of Earls and Conway, that's what they're going to do best.
And have they struggled against the bigger teams in Europe, Brian? Is that where they've come up short, when they haven't been able to?
Yeah, they have. But you talk about, against Saracens and against Racing, yeah, it tends to be. And that's why they brought in Snyman. And that's why, they felt that, you look at their front row, are there any real monsters, Kilcoyne aside, is there anyone that's, really at a high international level in the front row? The reality is no. I thought Scannell was going to be an international caliber hooker. Yes, he's gotten a few test matches, but he probably hasn't hit the expectation levels of a couple of seasons ago. And yeah, against the best European teams, you got to play international caliber sides and international caliber packs. And it just felt as though that they've come off second best to them. Yes, they're a team that can get out of their group stage. Yes, they can win, the occasional quarter-final now, but it's a different team that you meet in semi-finals and finals, and they've come unstuck. And that's why the news about Snyman's really disappointing, because was he one of the missing links within that setup to be able to let them enhance their game? He's an offloader, he's a ball carrier, he's a footballer. I think he's the perfect player to fit into that Munster team to get them to the next level. But it's great to see Ty Byrne back and being a nuisance as we know and love from him. And maybe under Andy Farrell, he'll see a little bit more international time if he can keep up those standards that he set at the weekend.
So if Munster fans are looking for, the case that they can cause Leinster serious bother on Friday night, Leo Cullen talked about their line-out work last week as their main, their best source of access to the game was how he put it. So that was good, and that was obviously even without Snyman when he went off injured. And also their work at the breakdown has been much talked about as well. So, they're kind of two areas where they can really put it up to Leinster.
Jan van Graan's right. They need a huge amount to go right against Leinster. There is a gulf between the teams at the moment. I think the bookies have it at an eight points. I like Munster at those odds. I think it'll be a tight game again. Right. But the reality is, you look at player for player, I do think, and the cohesive unit that Leinster are at the moment, Munster are going to be underdogs, and rightly so. But but what they've done at the breakdown in the last 2 weeks will absolutely cause headaches for Leinster. You look at what the stats that CJ Stander has picked off four turnovers in the defeat in the loss to Leinster, a couple of weekend. Clute, Peter O'Mahony. I even saw Conor Murray in there a couple of times that he felt hard done by not getting one or two steals. So it is clearly something that they've identified. And again, it comes down to every team in the world looks half decent when they've got fast ruck ball. Slow it down, set the defensive line, and give players an opportunity to get back on their feet and get line speed. It's a simple knock-on effect of slowing the ruck down to them being set to deal with the next phase. So, yeah, I think that's somewhere where Leinster have to be clinical, and along with their line out. Obviously, they were disappointing in the line out in the game last week. Peter O'Mahony again, pilfered ball. His timing looks as good as ever, and even an ability to be able to read Leinster's line out. So I think that's where the likes of Devin Toner, if he starts, will be very important to Leinster's first phase possession, because you deny them that, you deny them the ball or the quality possession, no team can play well just off broken phase. No,
and like we're talking here, is it, so there's a gulf of as you've said, and Munster, what will they come up with? I mean, the reality is they've a 5-day turnaround. Johan van Graan said we've about 60 minutes, proper training on Tuesday, and that's kind of it. There's not so much they'll be able to pull out of their back pocket here.
They're not going to find there's no new major new game plan. This is the same as what we saw last week against Leinster, only done better. And we saw aspects of it again against Connacht. Yes, when you're playing against 13, you might get a bit of an inflated view as to how good you've been. So I think they won't be patting themselves on the back too much on the back of that performance. But they've got very nice backs now, and it's about getting quality ball to them. They've got players that can give them go forward, but I looked at the quality of pass of Deolande and Farrell at the weekend. Very, very crisp, on the money, ball out in front. We saw the subtlety of Farrell's hands for the second Conway try against Leinster a couple of weeks or last week. So these things, it's constantly trying to add new aspects to your game and keep the opposition guessing. Someone like CJ Standard, I love to see him offloading the ball because you just don't expect it anymore. Footwork at the line and ability to get the ball out of contact, changing the point of contact. These are things to keep Leinster moving, keeping them on the back foot, stop that aggressive line speed. That's what they're going to need to do at the weekend to make sure that that Leinster have a more difficult day than everyone's making out.
Yeah, it's no easy task. And before you go, Ulster, Edinburgh, Murrayfield on the Saturday. Glasgow beat Edinburgh over the weekend. It was a dead rubber game, 15 points to 3. Richard Cockrell said it was a pretty average game, full stop, and it sounds like it. How will Ulster go against Edinburgh then?
Yeah, listen, it'll be difficult on the basis that Ulster haven't hit their straps yet, and it's hard to just produce when you've had one poor performance and one okay performance. So they'll be trying to convince themselves, yes, it's okay, it's knockout football now this weekend, a clean slate, let's produce our best. And they can go and do that, but I would worry for some of the errors that they've made, that some of the lack of cohesion. I think at times I felt Ian Madigan was playing a little bit deep and away from the defensive line, and encouraging line speed. So I would anticipate you're going to see the team that played against Leinster more so than the team that played against Connacht than the one that played against Leinster. So I think it'll be close, but home advantage. Edinburgh haven't been easy to beat over in Murrayfield, and I would imagine they'll remain the same.
Okay, Brian O'Driscoll. Thanks, Brian.
Cheers, Joe.
Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in.